Hi, I am T.R. Edwards, principal at River Valley High School in Bidwell, Ohio, and I would like to welcome you to another version or another episode of Voice of the Valley. Today, first of all, I would like to again thank the University of Rio Grande and their continued friendship and partnership they have with River Valley High School, interim president Dr. Clark. Also here in the studio, always wonderful to work with us, Mike Thompson and Patrick Dingle, with all of their help in getting our message out, letting us showcase our students and some of the events that are happening at the high school. I'd like to mention that we today, first, what we're going to start into is talking about our mock trial program. And the mock trial program has been at River Valley High School for several years. And just within the past 5-6 years, I think maybe, we have really stepped up and incorporated the mock trial program into the curriculum. So with me today, I'd like to introduce three guests that I have with me. First of all, I have Destiny Dotson. She is a student at River Valley High School. We'll get to know her a little bit better here in a minute. I have Miss Kaleigh Cox. She's an English teacher at River Valley High School. And finally, Mr. Aaron Walker, which is also an English teacher at River Valley High School. These three are very involved in the mock trial program this year, and we'll get to learn a little bit about that here in just a moment. The mock trial program does come from the Center for Law-Related Education, and we've had a great relationship with them, especially Kate Strickland and Ryan Susky up there at the OCLRE, and they bring the mock trial competition as well as other civic-related educational activities to the state and really provide a great service. Also, as part of my thank yous, I want to thank you particularly some attorneys that we work with in town, particularly Breno, which this year is our cooperating attorney, as well as some of our judges in the county and municipality that helps with the mock trial process. So again, a lot of people go into helping this be a successful competition and educational opportunity for our students. So before we go any farther, I'd like to start off by letting my guests introduce themselves. First of all, Destiny, thanks for joining us here today, and if you would give us a little bit about you.
My name is Destiny Dotson, and I'm involved with mock trial, FFA, Beta Club, and a lot of other clubs in our school. And this is a very special time for me because it's my senior year, so I'm trying to get all my college plans together and everything and just get on the right track.
Great, that sounds good. And I know that every year, it's not just this year's been very busy for you. You've been very involved since your freshman year, and this year you're just running a little bit everywhere, aren't you?
Yeah.
It'll be fun. It'll be a great year for you. Next, Miss Cox, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm Kaleigh. I am from Defiance, Ohio, in Northwest Ohio. This is my first year teaching at River Valley, and it's been really great getting to know the people that I'm working with and the students that I have, and also the community that the school is in. It's very unique, and I have loved everything about it so far. And so mock trial is just another part of what I'm getting to know more about.
And finally, we have Mr. Aaron Walker, who has joined us here before on the show, but today he's here with us to talk specifically about the mock trial competition.
So my name is Aaron Walker. I'm a proud graduate of River Valley High School, along with Mr. Edwards. I went to Ohio State, English teacher. I teach 12th grade English, and I've been teaching now for 13 years, I believe. So mock trial is a program that I love teaching. And I love the AP curriculum that mock trial is embedded in. So I'm excited today to be able to talk about that and what we're offering at River Valley and this program.
And it's really interesting that the mock trial program, we've kind of morphed it over the years, and finally for I would say the last 3 years really had the implementation of mock trial into the curriculum and the instructional practices that are embedded into that really create a lot of dialogue and argumentation skills and writing skills of our students. So would you mind to give our viewers a little background just on mock trial, kind of the basic premises of mock trial?
Mock trial is the largest non-athletic competition in the state, and there's anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 students that will compete in it every year. And essentially it is a program that is done outside of the school. It's run through the Ohio Center of Law-Related Education, and we're grateful for their partnership. And so mock trial is composed of teams of students who act as either prosecutors or defense. And what they do, the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education creates a case every year. It's usually centered around one particular amendment. There are all of these resources that students then are required to go through, and then they concoct a case. And so they are either for it or against it, and they compete in front of 3 judges or attorneys. And this is usually towards mid to late January. And it's a statewide competition. So you have regional competitions, and then you could advance from there and then all the way up to state. Over the last several years, we've had several teams that have been able to compete at the state level, and so we are hoping to advance that this year. River Valley started implementing mock trial probably close to 20 years ago. It was done with Cindy Graham. She was an English teacher. She's since retired, and so she brought it in as part of our school. And it was done as an after-school, almost extracurricular program. Starting, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, she decided to embed that as part of the curriculum when she was teaching AP seniors. And AP is Advanced Placement. This is a program that is run under the College Board. And so it is for a more rigorous curriculum. So she embedded that as part of the curriculum. And then over the last 3 years, we have made that as part of the junior and senior AP curriculum. And so each year we have had 4 to 5 teams compete between the juniors and seniors. And on each of those teams are around 45, I'm sorry, on each team is 8 to 12 students. And so total this year we have 45 students, is that right? 45 students that are competing on the junior and senior level. We've got 4 teams between the 2 of us this year, 2 junior teams, 2 senior teams. Last year we had 3 junior teams, 2 senior teams. And so when you look at it, it's an impressive number of students when you consider the size that we are. We have about 400 students total in the school, but if you look at the class, half of the senior class that's in the building is part of this mock trial program, and the same for the juniors. And this is a rigorous program. So I'm grateful for Cindy Graham and the work that she's done. And because it's now embedded as part of our curriculum, the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, OCLRE, is using our district, our school, as a model curriculum. So Cindy and I were invited to speak this past September. Kaleigh was there as well, and so we were able to talk about how we implement it as part of the curriculum to address standards and help hold students accountable, but then how also we do it after school and compete, and there's an authentic assessment. And so you really get a lot of rigor out of it that I feel very well prepares students for college, for just practical everyday skills, and then it helps fulfill those state standards that, of course, we have to complete every year.
Right. So as you mentioned, you know, it started out as an after-school or an extra activity, and I know that Cindy worked very hard. Mrs. Graham worked very hard to make sure that it was a valuable thing to incorporate into the curriculum, and really once she got into it, found that it was a very valuable piece of the curriculum. So talk to our viewers a little bit about just if they aren't familiar with mock trial at all. You mentioned that we had 5 teams last year, but each one of those teams has a prosecution side and a defense side. So we put so many students onto teams that last year and the year before, they had to spread us across the state. So we had to go to 2 different places in the state for competition. So you headed down to Portsmouth last year, I believe, and Mrs. Graham went up to Marietta. And so each one, even though you have a team, and maybe from the same school, with a prosecution side and a defense side, they don't necessarily go against each other. How does that competition work?
We don't know who we're going up against until the morning of the competition. And last year, the juniors, we all went to Portsmouth, like Mr. Edwards said, and then we don't know who we're going up against. So we're going up against any school in this region that has a team. So we've gone up against some of your private schools, we've gone up against some public schools, and we don't know what that's going to look like. So that makes things challenging, to say the least. So we have to be very well prepared to make sure that our students are equipped to know the case very well and that they can then think on their feet. So yes, there's a lot of prep work and practices and going over questions, but on the day of, students need to be able to think on their feet. And so that's one of the pieces about mock trial that I think is so valuable, is that it teaches the clean analytic skills of argumentation, of reading nonfiction pieces, of synthesizing information, but then it also teaches those soft skills of thinking on your feet, on being able to roll with whatever is happening, on being able to walk into an unfamiliar setting and compete against people that you've never met before in your life, and stand up in front of 3 judges who you don't know and be able to articulate clearly. So those speaking skills, those listening skills, the extemporaneous skills are also valuable. We also know, after working with the College Board for the last several years with several of our AP classes, that these are skills that many students struggle with. And so I was at a training this summer that it talked about how many college professors across the nation are talking about how students are able to walk on campus and they're great about spewing information. So they can take information in and they can spew it right back. But what many students are struggling with are synthesizing information, analyzing, critically thinking, and being able to work with their peers. They've created new courses in order to address this, but mock trial requires all of those things. And if you don't do those skills well, then you will be exposed. And that's what makes mock trial exciting, but also intimidating and challenging, because of all of those pieces. I didn't fully answer your whole question. But,
you're okay.
But those are all good things to know. As well.
Right, but if, Mike, if you could put up our first picture of one of our sessions together. As you can see there, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Bren No is our cooperating attorney this year in town, and we're very privileged to have Bren coming out and working with us. And this is just one after-school session, and you can see the number of students, and actually you can't see all the students, but you can see all the students there, and they're diligently working, and Bren is asking them different questions, and they're responding. We also had the privilege of, Kaleigh, you had some friends come down, and they worked with our students one afternoon at school, and they were very good about making sure that, like you said, those soft skills, those being able to enunciate and speak and know what you're talking about, and don't say have the idiosyncrasies that sometimes I do even as a speaker, and try to break yourselves of those. So again, as you can see, we have great support from different individuals coming in and trying to work with our students. So the professional development. Of course, neither one of you are trained attorneys, but I do say whenever you work with mock trial, you pick up on a lot of skills and gain some skills from those people that you work with and see. But how do you receive the case and start into this mock trial process?
Good question. So here's the case. I brought it with me. It is put together by the Ohio Center for Law-Related Education, and we receive it back in September, and then this is what students are required to know. So it is not anything light. It is thorough when it comes to the rules. It talks about the case itself, so who's put on trial, why they're put on trial. And then at the end of this particular one, there are 7 Supreme Court cases. Students are required to know that because they have to understand the precedent and they have to understand case law. And one of the things that is neat about this is that they can't just look at things from a narrow perspective. Every person who's part of this team must look at things and figure out how their argumentation is going to fit into the larger side. And they structure it so that each witness, each person that you call, and each student will portray one of these roles. There are pros and cons. So there are things that the prosecution could pick out in their favor. There are things that the defense could pick out in their favor. And so then when they cross-examine, there's lots of interesting things that happen. So no, Mrs. Cox and I are by no means legal experts, although we try very hard, and we are learning along with our students. And that's one of the things that I tell them is that, hey, I'm learning along with you. We will figure this out together. It's where we're grateful for Bryn No and Adam Salisbury has worked with us for several years. So we rely on them and some of their legal expertise. And then we go through and try to make sense of this together. So it's very much a team effort. Nobody can do it on their own. And so students are required to work.
Right, and like you said, Adam Salisbury, he's been a great partner in the mock trial process up to this point, and also Judge Evans. She's been a great partner and really has helped us facilitate some of our practices in scrimmage to get the students in the actual environment that they're going to be arguing their cases.
Jason Holdren has helped us in the past before, so we've got lots of community support, and that has been very helpful.
All right. So, Mrs. Cox, could you talk about, whenever Mr. Walker showed the front, it said there the state of Buckeye. So, what are the basic premises of this case?
So, in the state of Buckeye, we have an issue with some evidence that has been obtained through the lens of a drone 400 feet in the air. And they're trying to use this evidence to indict him, I guess, in this case for stealing money from a pension fund. And a lot of the students try to get caught up in the fact of trying to figure out whether he's guilty or not. But that's not what our case is. It's just about whether or not that evidence should be used. So it's Fourth Amendment search and seizure. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want to add
So yeah, I was going to say, Destiny, what is your role this year?
This year I am a prosecution attorney.
Okay. So whenever you're talking about the search and seizure piece of this case, those are things that's what you're really tuning in on to know what you're going to build your argument around, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you know about the case so far?
The state hired Omniscient to survey 500 acres of farmland. And while they did that, they caught a guy named Quinn Wolf on a laptop and had a notepad. And supposedly that was the code to the state pension fund that he supposedly stole from. So we're trying to see if that was in violation of his Fourth Amendment rights.
Okay. So all of your argumentation has to go back to, it's not just did he do it or not, but was the Fourth Amendment violated or not in obtaining the information. Well, that's interesting, and it's probably hard, too, that you really want to say whether you think he's guilty or innocent, but really it's whether his rights were violated.
Yeah.
So, oh, great. So it sounds like there's a lot of wheels turning at the same time with mock trial. Mrs. Cox, could you elaborate on a little bit of the development of argumentation and writing skills of your students that you see are a benefit from mock trial? And then building on that, I'd like Mr. Walker to talk about the fact that we have 2 years, juniors and seniors. What do you see of your seniors that have went through it one complete year and the growth that they have in year 2?
Yeah, in the first quarter before we started mock trial, my students were a lot less likely to volunteer information. They were more worried about being wrong whenever we were having discussions. But now that we've been doing mock trial, they love arguing with each other. And they, especially now that they're divided up into their defense and prosecution teams, they just love pitting questions against each other. And a lot of times I don't even have to direct that. They come in and they're like, did you read that in this witness statement? And they're bringing up things that I may not have even caught right away. And so one of the things that Mr. Walker was talking about was all the different people that have been helping us figure this out and how it's a team effort. But we also, I feel like I learn from my students all the time because so many of my students are pointing out things from the witness statements and other parts of the case that I may not have seen in that light. And so it's cool to see them take all the different perspectives and put it together, because that's really what it's about, is trying to figure out what the meaning of it all is and how they can best argue that in front of judges in a real courtroom. So
and I know I've seen sometimes in the early stages they want to invest emotions into the argument versus once they've developed that skill, then they're able to really build their argument, present their argument, defend their argument, which is really a great skill at the junior and senior level of high school to have a jump start and develop those skills going into college. And really, whether they're going into a legal field or not, it's that critical thinking piece and building a thought is really the skill that they're building there.
I often tell my students that we have a love and hate relationship with mock trial because there's part of us, and I think Destiny and Ms. Cox would agree, we love it because it is challenging. And I tell my students that, you know, this is where you embrace your inner nerd. We start this in November. We might take some smaller breaks where we'll look at other pieces. Again, these are 2 English classes, so my students over Christmas break are going to be reading 1984, and we've done some other little pieces here and there. But for the most part, our curriculum is centered around, from November until we compete in January, mock trial. And we love it because of all those challenging pieces, and yet we hate it because it forces all of us out of our comfort zones. There aren't clean, right answers. We're continually having to synthesize all this information. But I tell people regularly that this is very good for me as a teacher because it cleans up my thinking. You can't just make some grandiose stand and use your emotions. And I love working with young people, but by the junior and senior year, they've developed their BS skills. Well, mock trial forces you to cut through that because you will get called on it through cross-examination or through objections, and those judges will see you for that. So you put in all this work, and what's nice about mock trial is that it's an authentic assessment. I'm not giving them a multiple choice test to say, did you learn this material? They're going to stand in front of 3 judges against some other team that is trying to take them down, and that exposes you. So did you do your homework or did you not? So therefore, yes, students get grades, but I feel like there's much more of an intrinsic motivation where students want to learn and want to outpace the others. One of the things that Mrs. Cox and I have talked about, and I think Destiny's probably experienced it as well, is some healthy competition between the junior and senior classes. And even within those classes, there are 2 different teams. So we're all working together, and yet we're also competing against each other in our own practices. And on the day of competition, hopefully we have served each other well, and then we can go take down those other teams that have been working on this just like we have.
And I know that from watching all of this transpire over the year, all along it's a very good environment and very cooperative. And then about the second week of January, then we start getting our own, everybody goes to their own corners and really buckles down and they're ready to go. So Mike, if you could throw up a few pictures from last year, and then Destiny, I'd like you to talk a little bit as we're looking at some of these pictures about last year. Here you can see a team of juniors that are seniors this year, and many of them are competing again this year. There you can see Destiny in the back in the middle.
They're smiling, which is
they are smiling,
at
yes.
this point.
As you can see here, they're in an actual courtroom. So, Destiny, what was your role last year?
Last year, I was a defense attorney.
Okay, so this is your second year as an attorney then.
Yeah, so it's stressful.
But you're having to shift from last year you were a defense attorney, this year where you were a prosecuting attorney. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Like I said, they actually had to build their arguments and present their arguments. There you can see a couple young ladies that were presenting their arguments last year. Not only do we have, the attorneys in there, but we also have other roles. Mr. Walker and Mrs. Cox, could you talk about some of the other roles that we have in there as well?
Sure. Each team will be comprised of a team of 2 prosecuting attorneys, 2 defense attorneys. Each of those sides, prosecution and defense, will call 2 witnesses. So and students will play those roles of the witnesses. They will have had to have learned those parts and then defend themselves when they are being cross-examined or under direct questioning with their own attorneys. Then there's also timekeepers, and that's vital because if you go over time, there are penalties. There's a bailiff that swears everyone in, and then there are also what we've created, our team managers, which has been an important role because we have to be able to keep track of all of these different witnesses and their statements and the exhibits. And so we say that there is no easy role on the team because even if somebody, let's say, is a bailiff, they need to be the understudy for every other person in that group. So it is very much a collaborative team effort. And Destiny is a great example where she performed very well last year and then this year has been excited and ready to jump into the next case and really hone some of those natural leadership skills that she has and use them in a really healthy way. And she's one of our outstanding examples, so that's why she is here with us today.
What are you looking forward to this year, Destiny?
A lot of things. I have better confidence than I did last year, because last year was really stressful for me because I didn't know anything, and it was hard to look up to the seniors too, because the seniors knew what they were doing and I was just a little lost puppy in the field, so I didn't know anything. So it made me think a lot more, not so narrow-minded, and actually look at the bigger picture, not just if someone's guilty, to look at the amendments, bring in other court cases and everything else.
All right, and then whenever you're presenting, you don't know the judge that you're presenting to, so that has to make you very nervous as well. To you're not really sure how this judge is going to respond to you, and sometimes they aren't maybe that familiar with necessarily mock trial. They're used to presiding over their own courtroom, and I know that even whenever I go into a courtroom, it is a little bit intimidating because you see that judge's name on the wall, and you're like, okay, they're the real deal here. So it's very commendable to the young people that get up there and state their argument in front of them. So do you feel more prepared this year?
Yeah, I know how to do a little bit more direct questioning, cross-examination. I know a lot more than I did last year.
Great, great. So just right here before we end, Mrs. Cox, Mr. Walker, do you guys want to talk any more about the things that you think mock trial bring, or what you see from your students?
I'd say we're under the AP heading anyway, where this is done in our AP classes. That's a decision that we made. And so that's an end of course exam, and so there's a lot of academic credibility there already. And yet when we add in this mock trial piece, it gives, I think, even more weight to our own curriculum that allows students to jump in and be challenged all the more. We're also fortunate that we have this partnership with the University of Rio Grande, where our students are able to take this course and receive Comp 1 or Comp 2 credit as long as they qualify with it. So this mock trial piece, yes, is fun, challenging, but from an purely academic standpoint, it gives a whole lot of validity to our course for the College Board and also for the University of Rio Grande.
Well, on behalf of River Valley High School, I definitely want to wish you guys luck this year and commend you on the hard work I know that you've put in already up to this point, and it's only at the beginning. So lots of work over the winter Christmas break, and as soon as we come back, refining some things for competition. A few updates just before we end. I'd like to make sure everyone is familiar with River Valley High School Facebook page, and if you haven't went out there and liked that, please do. We have loaded some pictures onto our Facebook page. Lots of pictures about events going on, or events and things going on around the school. I do want to mention that tomorrow starts our first day of the Harlem Renaissance Project, which is actually a cross-curricular project between the social studies and the English department in our English departments with the sophomores. As far as athletics goes, I would like to welcome everyone out to River Valley High School as the girls basketball team takes on the Meigs Marauders tomorrow night at home. This Saturday, the boys basketball team heads down to Mercerville to take on the Running Rebels of South Gallia. Our wrestlers, they're really working hard this year. They have an upcoming meet next week on the 19th, and that's at Parkersburg. Our show choir takes off on their annual holiday tour. The show choir and drama team, class, there we go. They take off to our elementaries and other things around the community. So, and then the last thing that was just announced is we're looking forward to our spring musical, which is the Newsies, and that was just announced. So, again, for the Voice of the Valley, I am T.R. Edwards, Principal of River Valley High School, and thank you for joining us.